So before I disposition these solar panels as instructed, I wanted to talk to you about what I've done to kind of lead up to this point. As some of you may know, over the summer I've reworked my solar panels. I suppose I better pause for a second and cover the mess, because I'm sure it'll show up in the background at some point. Somebody's going to complain about it. We are in the process of demolishing the old camper, and I've got quite a bit of it taken to the dump already, but I'm going to wait to get that disassembled any further until after the first frost. I would rather it be fairly cold, because I think there's a lot of snakes underneath there, black snakes. I've seen them all summer. The cat has been chasing them all over the place, so I just thought I'd wait. But as I was saying, I've done quite a bit to rework the solar panels this year. They used to be down here, and to kind of explain why we put them here was, at the time when we moved into the property, we were living in that camper that I just showed you, this mess here, and they were down here right where I'm standing, so about 10 or 20 feet, 15 feet maybe down. Well, as you can tell, there's trees behind me. This is the east, so the sun comes up in the morning and sets over the other way in the evening. Well, you wouldn't get any sun on these solar panels till 11 o'clock, especially this time of year in the fall. Carolyn wanted to get the camper out of here. At the same time, her son was here living in that trailer that we bought this last spring, and he wanted to run the air conditioner. So as much as I dreaded it, I went ahead and moved the solar panels up here. So I disconnected them all. Well, actually what I did was I bought a separate charge controller. Kind of explain real quick, I know a lot of folks are going to say I'm repeating myself, but you kind of have to. I had a charge controller that allows 40 amps. Well, I had 50 amps worth of solar panels, and I wasn't that worried about the extra 10 amps. But what I noticed when he was running the air conditioner was I was only getting 20 amps through it, 25 amps through that charge controller. So I kept thinking maybe my wiring was messed up or something was messed up. So I really started digging into this no-name brand charge controller. And what I kind of figured out was a battery, a 100 amp hour battery is only allowed, well, any amp hour battery, but let's just say a 100 amp hour battery, because that's what I have. I have 8 of them actually. You can only put 25% of the amps into a battery when you're charging as the total capacity of the battery. So 100 amp hour battery, 25% of that is 25 amps, which was exactly what my charge controller was putting into the battery. So I think it thought I had an 100 amp hour battery, when in reality I actually have 800 amps of battery. I have, well, it's actually 775, but I have 8 batteries, and they're all tied together. So this is a 100 amp battery, 100 amp battery, 100 amp battery. When you tie them together like this, positive, 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 negative, 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 you can see the wiring. But the charge controller already thought I had one battery. So what I did was I bought a second charge controller. Now between the two of them, thinking I only have a 100 amp battery, 100 amp, 100 amp, 200 amps, now it's allowing 50 amps to go through, sometimes 60, believe it or not, which is exactly what I have in solar panels. So I don't need any more charge controllers. It's giving me everything I have available to give it. So when we moved here, I didn't really focus on the solar panels that much. I have much more important things to worry about, like building a tiny house, getting chickens on the property. And I figured as long as I had a generator, I was okay until I could figure out what was wrong with them. So I ran the generator quite a bit. Of course, the commenters always complained that I wasn't really off grid because I was living on a generator, but I figured I had more important things to deal with. Well, when he moved here, I knew we weren't going to be able to afford to run a generator all the time so he could have air conditioning. So I had to figure out what to do. And so I concluded I needed a new charge controller. Well, I also got 2 new solar panels. So I went from 1,000 watts of solar to 1,200 watts of solar. And now I have more electricity on a sunny day like this than I can imagine using, especially on a summer day. So when I moved them up here from that 10 feet down there, I moved them up here, I got an extra 2 hours worth of sunlight when I did it. So this was June time frame. So now I can run my well. My well is 800 watts. Now, I know a lot of people complain about the messiness of my solar panels laying on the ground. I got weed control metal here, just whatever I can to keep the weeds down. But I put it on a tarp. Down here I didn't have on a tarp, so those weeds always grow around the wires and everything. But one of the reasons I left them on the ground is we get storms around here a lot with the potential of hail. And I want to show you, I know you can't see it very well, but that solar panel there has a big old chip in the center of it. What happened was a gust of wind grabbed it and knocked it over onto a piece of rock, just a rock, and it cracked the outer glass. So on a solar panel you have outer glass and then you have the little blue panels themselves. I didn't think that there was that much force being put into that solar panel that would crack it, but it did, it cracked it. Now, it did not crack the blue solar cells, which is great. I have thought about replacing that glass, but I have tried to put a solar panel together myself. So I bought a bunch of solar cells and I tried to put them all together. Oh, those solar cells are extremely fragile. You breathe on them, they break. So I just left it alone. And I thought I was losing some electricity through that panel, but I'm not. It's producing as much as everything else is. So when I get a warning that there's going to be a hailstorm, what I do is I flip all these over upside down onto the ground, about 3 stacks. So 3 stacks of 4 roughly. And then I cover them up on that metal. So I know the metal looks terrible. It looks terrible laying around here. The tarp looks terrible laying around here. But now you kind of start to see why I'm doing what I'm doing. If I had these solar panels on a stand, I wouldn't be able to turn them upside down. Now, someone argued, well, what you would need to do is build a shelter that you could move over the solar panels. So if all 12 solar panels were on a stand, I would have to build this monstrosity of a thing that I could pick up and put over it. Oh, wait a minute. There's a couple things with that. One, aren't we trying to make the place look better? That was the whole point of putting it on a stand, is so it looks better. Because this looks terrible. So now I got this stand sitting out in the middle of the yard that's never used except when I need it for the hailstorms. And somebody will say, well, just leave it over the solar panels. Somebody will say that, I promise you. Well, if I put it over the solar panels all the time, you won't get sun on the solar panels and you won't get any electricity, which is the whole point of the solar panels, is to make electricity. I'm not that interested in it looking nice. Well, what about your neighbors? I don't think my neighbors really care. They can't see it from here. Who cares? I mean, what difference does it make? I came out here to live a dream, live off grid, be happy, be independent from the power company. I didn't come out here to have a manicured lawn. But I knew that when fall time arrived, I was going to have some issues. So, like I said, Carolyn built this shed early summer and told me to tear this down. Well, I didn't want to tear it down in the summertime because, like I said, the snakes. So just recently I started knocking this down. And the reason I needed to knock it down now and leave it as it is until the first frost is because it started shading the solar panels, which I knew would happen. As the sun goes further south, the sun has a bigger shadow, bigger angle on it. Which kind of, oh, see, I'm running into all kinds of issues with fall. You can see, I didn't even notice it until just now, that I have a shadow right at the bottom of that, caused by this solar panel. So I need to move this solar panel forward a bit. So now you can see that it's not shadowed. There's a huge advantage of being able to keep these mobile. Now, you'll see that I have a bunch of trees that go around our tiny house. You can't even see the tiny house from here. So as the sun travels that direction, towards the evening time, more and more of the area gets shaded, causing me some issues in the evening time. Well, I want to get as much sunlight for as long as I can. The batteries get charged by 11 o'clock. I run the well by 10. By 11, the batteries are charged. But as the sun starts to go behind these trees, now I'm starting to use off batteries before nighttime. As you know, I have a freezer that I got to keep that freezer running. I just have to keep it running throughout the night. So I'd like to make sure that I have plenty of leftover battery. I don't want to ever risk draining my batteries too low and damaging them. So I'd like to get as much energy without running the generator as possible in the evening time. I've been watching the shading in the evening the last few days, around 4 or 5 o'clock. Sure enough, the sun comes up behind these trees and shades everything. Well, then this morning I got up and I noticed that this area that I was using to collect sunlight at 8 a.m. in the past, because the sun would come over the trees, and at 8 a.m. would hit those, and then by 9 a.m. hit those. Well, that's 10 amps, those 2 solar panels sitting there. 10 amps, 5 each, that I could be gaining for an hour. That's quite a bit of electricity, actually. Came down this morning and I noticed that this whole area was shaded. So I knocked some weeds down. Now somebody's gonna say, why don't you knock all this down? I had this knocked down at one point, but it's in really bad shape back here. Lots of trash and garbage and stumps, and I've knocked a lot. I mean, well, you can see there's a stump that I created. So I cut a bunch of these trees down, and it's just impossible to maintain. I can't get a brush hog back here. There's wire, fencing, just all kinds of garbage. So I just leave it and think it's a nice little natural setting. Carolyn kind of likes it as our weeded area. I mean, she hides her compost bin back here. So it doesn't matter. We don't really need that space. If we ever need it, then I'll deal with it then. So I knocked some weeds down a little bit here, and I put the solar panels here because this area had sun, even though right here didn't. It's been really nice having these solar panels in a flexible state where I can move them around anywhere in the yard I need to, pretty much. So yesterday I moved all the solar panels up one spot because it was getting shaded until about 10:30. Those solar panels down here at the bottom were getting shaded. Then this one, there's a stump there we got a tire around so I don't hit it with the lawnmower. I put that one on the tire. So now everything's back to getting sun at 9:30-ish, except these down here. So I noticed when everything else was getting the sun and those 3 weren't, that the top of the shed was. So once again, maintaining some flexibility, I just threw them up there. Now, I gotta be cautious with that. Those can slide off. So I don't know, somebody's gonna complain, but I wanted to make this flexible because at some point I'm gonna have to take them down. If there's ever a hailstorm or anything, I'm gonna need to be able to easily take them down without doing a bunch of bolts and all that kind of stuff. So I took some wire and I just wired it to the other side here and back down. This also holds the tarp down. The reason I have the tarp here is because it gets so hot inside the shed during the summertime that my equipment kept overheating. So the tarp, the white tarp, keeps that from overheating. Also, there are gaps in the shed when you're putting it together. So if it's a huge rain event, wind will push that rain into the building, and I didn't want to get the equipment wet. So the tarp kind of diffuses that. It's not a perfect tarp. It does have rips in it. So the point of this video is the masters of off-gridding, the commenters, the ones that don't live off-grid but they know everything about it, are constantly screaming at me that I need to pick this up. And they seem to understand nothing. They don't understand that it's not about the prettiness. I'm not here to be pretty. I'm here to live stress-free. And this is the key to my life, is to live stress-free. People don't like my chicken coop just because it's put together, homemade. I've talked about getting a trampoline, putting some fence around it. I've seen these all over the area. And you can put your chickens in that with a chicken run. Then I hear people always say, can't afford chickens, you end up spending $10,000 just to get them set up. Well, I didn't spend that much. I probably didn't spend $500 on this. What people do is they nitpick themselves to death so they can't afford to live off grid, and then complain when somebody else is doing it. It's jealousy, and they find reasons why they can't do something instead of just saying, look, I'm a big OCD kind of guy. I mean, I have a lot of issues. I would like to clean things up. You know, this thing sitting here demolished right now, I'm just dying to get this cleaned up. I know it's not safe to do right now, so I gotta wait. I would have rather just left it up. But no, I needed the electricity. So you just ignore these things. Find yourself a piece of place out of the way nobody cares about, and let it look trashy. Am I worried about the trashiness, or am I worried about electric? Am I worried about the trashiness, or am I worried about living a stress-free life where I don't have to go to work for an employer who's going to chew me out every day, telling me that I clean up that mess? If you want to live your dreams, make some compromises. Not everything has to be perfect, because when you look for perfection, you're never going to live the dreams. I hear everybody asking me, you know anywhere I can get 20 acres so I can live off grid? Why do you need 20 acres? You can't afford it. You're going to be in debt if you do buy it, because you're going to have to get a loan. I paid cash for this, literally cash, with the the green dollars. So if you click this up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was talking about water. So if I can inspire you to live stress-free, so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.